I have watched 11,000 deaths from the glass booth above the scanner bay, and I had stopped expecting any of them to surprise me. That changed with the human they carried in on a stretcher from the wreck of his transport pod, burned along one side, his vitals already sliding toward the flat green line we mark as the end of a recordable life. I am old. Older than the species that built this vessel. Older than the language I am speaking to you in now. My kind are called tenders, though the humans who later learned of us preferred the word watchers, and I did not correct them. We attach ourselves to dying things, not to save them, we rarely can, but to witness, because something in the structure of a death, properly observed, tells you what a life actually was. The medics worked on him in the bright bay below me, daylight pouring down through the overhead panels they keep flooded at all hours, so the crew never loses the rhythm of a true sun. I watched the monitor the way I always do. My attention narrowed to the long, pale ribbon of his heartbeat, and I watched it go to nothing. The timestamp read it precisely. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Not a while, not several minutes. The machine does not round. 4 minutes and 12 seconds of absolute silence in his chest. And then, against every probability the medics quoted to each other in low voices, his heart found itself again, and resumed. I noted it and moved on, because dying things sometimes come back, and the math of how long they were gone rarely means anything beyond itself. His name, according to the manifest, was Aldous Farrow, 3rd engineer, 40 years on contract ships, no family listed in the next of kin field, which is its own kind of fact about a man if you know how to read it. I have read 10,000 manifests. The empty fields tell you as much as the full ones. He recovered enough over the following days to talk, to walk the corridor outside the bay leaning on a rail, to make the small human jokes about hospital food that I have come to recognize as a species-wide reflex against fear. The medics liked him for it. He had a way of making the junior staff laugh without seeming to try, and more than once, I watched him talk a frightened crewman through a minor injury with nothing but a level voice and a steady hand, the way you'd calm a spooked animal rather than a person. I did not speak to him. Tenders do not, as a rule. We observe from above, and we leave when the dying stops being interesting. He should have stopped being interesting. He did not. 11 days later, a valve failure in the transport bay's air system put him back on the same table, the same bright panel light overhead, and his heart stopped a second time. I was already in the booth. I do not know why. Perhaps some old instinct in me had marked him without my permission. I watched the timestamp roll forward the way I always do, indifferent, professional, and then I watched it resolve, and I sat very still, in a way I have not sat still in over 4,000 years. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. To the second, not 4:13, not 4:11, the exact same span of silence, twice, in the same chest, 11 days apart, under 2 unrelated causes of death that shared nothing but the bay they happened in. I pulled the logs and checked them 3 more times after that, the way a younger tender might, though I am long past the age where I should need to check anything twice. I cross-referenced the medical scanner's independent clock against the bridge chronometer, in case some fault in the bay's systems had simply repeated an old recording by accident, some glitch dressed up as a miracle. The clocks agreed with each other and with themselves. There had been no error. There had only been 2 deaths, separated by a corridor and 11 days, that had each lasted exactly as long as the other and not 1 heartbeat more. I am not a being who startles easily. I have watched a star's last flare and a child's last breath in the same week without my pulse analog shifting. But I sat in that booth running the numbers a second time, and a third, because 4 minutes 12 seconds is not a number that should choose to repeat itself for a creature with no clock inside him keeping count. When he woke the second time, he did not make the joke about hospital food. He lay still for a long while, eyes on the daylight panel above him, and then he said, to no one in the room who could have heard it, same room, same door at the end of it. I counted the same 12 steps before someone called me back. The medic beside him assumed delirium and logged it as such. I did not assume anything. I came down from the booth for the first time in 11,000 deaths, stood at the foot of his bed in a body shaped enough like the crew's own that it would not alarm him, and asked him to describe the door. He told me calm the entire time, the way men of his age and trade tend to be calm about things that would unmake a younger man. A plain door, pale wood, neither locked nor open, with 12 steps of hallway leading to it both times, no further, no closer. He said he had not tried to open it. He said something on the other side of it had not been ready for him yet, and that this had not frightened him so much as it had felt, in his words, like being early for an appointment he hadn't made. I told him what a tender is. I told him I had logged the duration. I told him it had repeated itself precisely, and watched something move behind his eyes that was not fear, and was not disbelief. It was closer to recognition, the way a man might look at a stranger's face and feel, against all logic, that he has met them before. 12 steps, he said again, mostly to himself. Maybe that's how far it lets you walk before it decides. I have no answer for what waits behind a door measured in human paces, and I told him so honestly. I am old enough to know the limits of my own witnessing. I can record a duration. I cannot tell you what owns it. He was discharged a week later, scarred along one side, walking without the rail. I should have ended my attention there. That is the custom. That is 11,000 precedents of mine. Instead, I requested, through channels a tender is rarely granted, to remain assigned to his vessel as ship's physician for as long as his contract ran. The captain, baffled, approved it. I do not think she understood what she was approving. In the years that followed, I watched him the way I had once only watched the dying, except now I watched a man living, which is a far stranger occupation for one of my kind. He took apart and rebuilt the same failing coolant pump 4 times over 2 years, rather than report it for replacement, because he said the part had character. He kept, in a drawer by his bunk, a single glove belonging to a crewman who had transferred off years before, for no reason he could explain, except that throwing it away had felt wrong. He never once mentioned the door again, though I noticed he had started counting his own steps without seeming to know he was doing it. 12 paces to the mess hall door, 12 to the lift, as though some old measurement had lodged itself in his legs and would not leave. He never died a 3rd time on my watch. He flew 4 more years under my care, calm in every crisis the way I came to expect of him, and when his contract ended he shook my hand, an odd, warm human gesture I had never had cause to receive before, and told me he hoped, whenever it happened again, that I would be the one reading the clock. I do not know if I will be. Tenders go where the dying calls us, not where we wish to stand. But I kept his file open longer than any file in 11,000 years, and some nights, in the dim hours when the ship runs its lights low and even daylight panels dim to rest the crew, I still find myself doing the arithmetic. 4 minutes, 12 seconds, twice, to the second, in a man who has otherwise lived an unremarkable, decent, calm sort of life. I have no theory that explains it. I only know that somewhere, behind a pale door at the end of exactly 12 steps, something is keeping a very precise count of him, and has not yet decided that his time is owed. I find, against every instinct of my long and patient kind, that I want very badly to know what happens when it finally does.